artificial intelligence should be giving you an existential crisis. And if it's not, then you haven't been paying attention. So, Brother Tahir, why don't you tell us about the news regarding Deepseek quickly and why it matters?
So Deepseek is the latest AI model, and specifically is causing waves, principally because it's Chinese, I think, compared to Western, and the Western billion dollar valued AI companies are freaking out.
It seems to actually threaten like much more than the models themselves. It seems to threaten a lot of people's sense of self.
Yeah,
that the Chinese are beating them.
Yeah, well, China's beating them in so many metrics now.
Yeah.
But in this particular one, it's because they produced an AI model which appears on all the parameters for excellence to be out-competing.
Matching or
out-competing the US companies, but it's doing it for like a much, much, much cheaper price, and it's also doing it without the NVIDIA chips.
Yeah,
which is basically
it's got some. It doesn't have as many.
But it doesn't have as many because there are US sanctions against China on the use of chips. Or development of chips. So as a result, they had to generate this AI model under a sanctions pressure, basically. They had to do it on the cheap. And as a result, it actually uses less energy as well, uses less electricity output, achieves better or the same in different parameters, and is way cheaper.
Have you used it?
I have used it.
How do you find it?
I find it's not as flowery and as lovely as kind of OpenAI's GPT-004.
ChatGPT,
But Deepseek is much more blunt and direct, but it also does have... the nice thing, it shows you its reasoning. As you're going through, it shows you its reasoning. But I also feel that it sometimes doesn't seem to understand what you're saying. In terms of its linguistic ability. Compared to some of the OpenAI models. Nevertheless, on parameters, that's my personal feeling. On parameters, it's doing better.
No one cares about human subjective beliefs anymore.
Exactly, correct.
And when you use it on Perplexity, I mean, when you use it as they've just added it as one of their research things. I mean, it's incredible.
Amazing. It is incredible.
So I mean, I think it's caused so many waves. It's cheaper. They've made loads of improvements. It's all these Chinese engineers out engineering the Americans. Hilariously, like a few days after Donald Trump announces his Stargate SG-1, as I like to call it, project. I'm a big fan of SG-1 and Atlantis. The Stargate project, which is a huge $500 billion infusion into AI infrastructure, basically into OpenAI infrastructure. And now, this Chinese firm has come along, and it's not going to be the last one. They're going to have more models, and there are going to be other Chinese startups that are probably going to do similar things.
Exactly.
That are going to start directly competing and making things open source. Why does the open source thing matter?
It matters a lot because effectively it democratizes AI. And AI is going to be a frontier of military technology. It's going to be a frontier of economic activity. I mean, the UK government comes out with these grand banal statements, doesn't it? Grand yet banal statements. We're going to be the forefront of AI technology, and then 2 weeks later, Chinese comes out with that kind of announcement. We're like, well, where are we sitting? We haven't got really any major technological output.
What I fear it may mean is that we just sell out to major,
American US firms.
firms.
That's exactly what it means. That's exactly what it means. And so in reality, it's the next frontier of technology which will influence all the different parameters of life. And as a result, by democratizing it and making it open source, it effectively removes the hegemonic power that comes with US firms and US companies holding these technologies.
And it reminds me of a previous moment, which was the Huawei, when they made their 7nm chip, it flew under the radar a little bit more than this. But actually it was a similar kind of earthquake in those industries, because they were like, oh my God, we didn't think Huawei would be able to do this. We've been sanctioning them. We think that we're the only people that can create these complex supply chains that create these incredibly difficult to make chips. But actually, Huawei's getting there and may even will be much further by now, because this was a while ago. So China is catching up.
I'm not saying it's the same kind of technological revolution, but people may not understand why this is a big deal. And it's illustrated nicely by the changeover in terms of global dominance between Islamic empires and Western empires. And that occurred for a multitude of reasons, but one of the absolute fundamentals was the development of printing technology in Germany. And that enabled information dissemination at a much faster rate. It was like Gutenberg printing press. enabled information dissemination at a much faster rate and democratized information at a much faster rate and sharing of human knowledge.
Yeah.
What AI does is it takes the ability of a human being to search Google to a next level. It's like having somebody who's extraordinarily beyond human capacity, efficient in reading, citing, summarizing, and explaining information throughout the web. And as a result, it then makes what was previously present but difficult and a work to access into immediately accessible. Right? And that is opening a new frontier because it effectively extends the reach of the human mind beyond the current capabilities, which is what books did initially. And that played a major part in the dominance of Western capitalism over the Islamic systems, or
which were decaying,
the so-called Islamic nations.
I mean, at that point, they were 800-900 years into the Islamic world, and they were decayed and crystallized and unable to change. Whereas, like the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, a word of wisdom is the lost property of a believer. So wherever you find it, pick it up and use it. So there's no reason why that alone should have actually
but it did
destabilize the Islamic empires. But in the condition that they were,
it did. Yes,
it was one of the major things.
It was one of the major things.
So I mean, that's really interesting what you said about it's something which can augment human intelligence and augment our capacity to create, right? And this is one of the existential crises which I think is going on, which is that AI is getting so good. It's kind of replacing us. Like people always imagined that the way robots and technology would replace us would be through physical labor, and the more intellectual stuff would be left.
We'd be doing it.
Yeah, but actually it's been, if anything, the opposite. I mean, the robotics is coming, but actually what's here is the AI, and it's able to create unbelievable art. So you just put in a few prompts. Songs are getting very good. Videos coming, it's already somewhat here, and it's going to be here in the next year even better.
Yeah, you might be able to write a movie script and then
and it'll just generate it,
and it'll generate your movie for you eventually.
And these LLMs are just absolutely incredible. And you made a brilliant point to me earlier about.
Thank you.
Yeah, I won't tell anyone.
No, don't worry.
Let's move on. So why don't you share? When you say what you said about how this has always been the preserve of humans.
Yeah,
and the existential aspect of that.
Yeah, so the existential aspect is this, that humans, have always prided themselves upon their intellect, and it's an idol in reality. Humanity is intellectually superior to all other organisms on this planet.
Yeah.
However, the purpose of our intellect is not that it's an end in itself.
Yeah.
From a religious or a perspective of God who created us, the purpose of our intellectual capability is not the aim of the intellectual capability is not an end in itself.
Yeah,
right.
Just to be intellectual.
Right.
Yeah.
The aim of that intellect is to use it to reflect upon one's purpose and to reason through questions which are bigger than the worldly life, which are to do with our purpose. Is there a God? Is life designed?
How can I do good?
How can I do good? Is there a place is there a life after death?
Yeah.
These are questions which we have been given a sufficiently reasoning brain to achieve answers to, such that God may hold us accountable for the decisions we make on the basis of those reasoning, which is why the Quran says, God says in the Quran, I cause my wrath to descend on those who do not make use of their reason.
Yeah.
Now, that does not mean that we couldn't therefore come across a system which is more capable intellectually than us.
Yeah.
Right? Because our intellect is not infinite. Our intellect is there to a level whereby it is sufficient for the purpose for which we were created, which is spiritual, not intellectual.
I think that's a really good point. And let me just sharpen that by, if we harken back to, even since the Greeks, I think Aristotle said that, speech and intellect, I think logos, is actually the distinguishing mark between man and beast.
Yeah.
So this has always been taken as what makes you human is your intellect. This is what separates you from the beasts, from the animals, from the primates. It's the fact that you can reason. So now, if something can reason better than us,
what's our purpose?
What are we?
Exactly.
And what are they?
So this was actually answered by Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, His Holiness, the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community and promised Messiah and Imam Mahdi, in his book, Philosophy of the Teachings of Islam. In an amazing section, page 160 of this book, he writes the following. He writes, an intelligent person, very interesting. He opens with this. He says, in terms of the purpose of human life, he says, an intelligent person can appreciate this problem in this way also, that the purpose of everything is to be determined by its highest performance, beyond which its faculties cannot operate. Okay. So he says, for instance, the highest function of a bullock, of a bull, is plowing or irrigation or transportation. Its faculties are not adapted to anything else. Therefore, the purpose of a bullock's life is just these three things. It has no power to do anything else. But when we look into the faculties of man and try to discover what is their highest reach, we find that he seeks after God the exalted. He desires to become so devoted to God that he should keep nothing as his own and that all of his should become God's. He shares with the other animals in his natural urge towards eating and sleeping, etc. In industry, some animals are far ahead of him. Indeed, the bees extracting the essence of different flowers types produce such excellent honey that man has not yet been able to match them. It is obvious, therefore, that the highest reach of man's faculties is to meet God the exalted. Thus, the true purpose of his life is that the window of his heart should open towards God.
Very beautiful. Very beautiful. So what do you take from that as being the most significant thing there?
I think the key point is that if you take your intellect as what you are, if you pride yourself on your intellect and you define yourself by your intellectual capabilities, you should be having an existential crisis right now because you've just been made wholly redundant.
Yeah.
Okay. AI can think better than you. Almost certainly, if you're of average intelligence. Even if you're of fairly high intelligence, it can still probably think better than you. Or if it can't, it can access knowledge faster and come to conclusions on the basis of that information faster.
And it has greater breadth of knowledge and accessibility than you do.
But if you value yourself in terms of more than your intellect, if you recognize that you are not only a mind but also a soul, right? That it's not that you are a body, it's that you have a body, right? Then you, in actual fact, can recognize that this poses no existential threat to you because your purpose is spiritual in nature, because it doesn't matter how far AI can reason, right? It does not have that ability to reach, to make choices of good and evil, for which you will then die and then be held accountable and for the purpose of knowing and reaching God.
Well, there's an interesting thing about AI because we talk about it like it thinks and reasons, and it's not... You know, in one way, it's a very natural way. I'm not criticizing those who say that because it's the natural way that you would talk about them.
Yeah.
But actually, the essential quality of thinking is knowing, is like knowing what you're thinking, right? It's a subjective thing of which you can't really describe. But if I am thinking of an elephant, I've actually got the elephant in mind.
Yeah.
Whereas when a large language model, this AI is simply associating one word to another and generating them. So we say it thinks and it reasons, but actually it creates the illusion of thinking and the illusion of reasoning. But the outcome of that process, whatever process is behind the hood, is often matching humans or exceeding it.
Yeah.
So if you take that outcome as your purpose, I want to be able to create documents on this subject or that subject or write like this or that, then actually already you're being outmatched. And where do you think we're going to be in 5-10 years? Yeah. You know, you're going to be completely outclassed.
Yeah, you are.
In many ways. Yeah. I think mainly you can maybe say through imagination and vision you'll be able to still do something greater. But I mean, I'm willing to be proved wrong. I have been in other ways with AI, you know, over the years. I don't think I ever really considered it properly that we could get to this point. I kind of just assumed this was unattainable in a way.
Yes.
Not that I thought about it in depth, but you just intuitively feel like, no, these machines can never do the kind of thinking and writing that I do. And you know, I'm in my 30s and they can. Yeah. Which is kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
I think you're absolutely right that I find it very interesting how you put the difference between knowing and associating.
Yeah.
And they don't know, they associate.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't know what an elephant is. It has perhaps, you could argue though that it defines an elephant in terms of these qualities and these qualities and these functions.
Yeah.
And that is an animal, and animal is a type of thing. You could argue that that's exactly what
the brain may do.
What the humans do. What the humans do.
Don't give it away. It's too soon.
But I don't think that's necessarily true because we simply it is possibly true, but we have more sensory modalities by which that information reaches us.
Yeah, but even then,
if we see an animal, if we see an elephant and we feel it and we touch it and we ride it, then we know it.
Yeah.
Through further associations.
Here's the difference. We experience.
Yes.
It doesn't experience.
I was about to say that's exactly correct.
Yeah.
Which is that, you know, I think therefore I am is something which is exclusive to humans.
Yeah. Because, and that means that we are redefining thinking and reasoning as being, you know,
an associative exercise.
No, as being a true thinking and true reasoning.
Yes.
As being the domain of subjective of subjects,
yes.
of persons who
Yes.
have a subjective inner experience.
Yeah.
But I think that's reasonable because that is the quality of reasoning. Is you know what you're talking about, and
Well, a lot of people talk about stuff they don't know anything about.
yeah, but they think they do, and they feel that they do.
Yeah.
That's the difference. They may be wrong, but actually they still have a thinking. They still have a feeling underneath
Yes.
it, right?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting twist here, which is that it can produce something which may be actually much better than the vast majority of humans, and yet there still seems to be something which is essentially human, which no computer or machine will ever reach. And people have spoken a long time about artificial general intelligence and will it create sentience. But I actually think, and we were discussing this before, that it's as we get better and better models, people are going to be more and more unconvinced that this is actually sentient.
Correct.
Because I don't know, we can just tell. You can tell it's not.
Yeah. You can tell it's not, and it isn't sentient.
Yeah.
And I think that this is going to be a nail, not the nail, but a nail in the atheist coffin.
Right.
Because they have always represented the human mind and consciousness as an epiphenomenon, as an emergent function of various, interconnected thalamic,
basically, if you get your electric circuits
recursive circuits, basically. Yeah. But if you have a large language model, it's effectively doing something not the same, but it might eventually get there.
No, but it's the same type of thing.
It's the same type of thing.
It's a bunch of electrical circuits which have been trained in a certain way to give with certain inputs to create certain outputs.
Yes.
That is the atheist view of the brain.
Yeah,
right?
That's correct.
So then the question is, if you are an atheist and you are a true materialist, and you believe that we don't have a soul and it's just matter, okay, your matter is chemical molecules of one kind and AI's is chemical molecules of another kind.
Yeah.
So why is it that you give yourself rights, but you wouldn't give an AI right?
Yeah, I mean, if you take it down to its fundamental, you have to argue from the atheist perspective that actually the fact that the light electrical circuit in your house has consciousness by definition, because it's an interconnected circuit. And the question then becomes, well, at what point does the interconnected circuit produce the epiphenomenon of consciousness? And how do you know that your electrical circuit isn't conscious, right? So the same goes for in actual fact, any complex phenomena, any interconnected system. So there we're talking about cities, roads, the weather, climate, a country, the ocean.
Yeah.
Do all of these have associative consciousness to them? Because they're all interconnected complex systems.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? And so does it really matter that it's not a neurotransmitter across a synapse?
Yeah.
Why should that matter?
Yeah.
Why should that be the determining factor
And
in
it's a really
consciousness?
rudimentary mistake, because they're looking at a human, they're saying, okay, a human is conscious. I'm looking for an explanatory cause. I'm going to isolate one feature of that human, which is their complexity. But that's not determinant.
No.
That doesn't mean that just because a human is complex doesn't mean that's what's causing it to be conscious.
Yeah.
If you are taking seriously that we are conscious beings, which obviously we all accept, and that we have to explain it, then you need an explanation that is a sufficient cause.
Yeah.
Right? So if you just have a bunch of dead matter, right, and say if I put a bunch of dead matter in certain configurations, like we're now doing in AI, and I train on inputs and outputs, then that itself creates consciousness. Well, how?
Yeah.
How do you? That's magic, as Thomas Nagel says. He says that's not emergence. That's magic.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a really interesting question. One of the most startling aspects of this is that actually the Quran has an answer, which people may not realize. But it talks about how everything in the universe has an aspect of consciousness. So, for instance, in chapter 41, it says, 41:12, then he, i.e. God, turned to the heaven while it was something like smoke, and said to it and to the earth, come ye both of you, willingly or unwillingly. They said, we come willingly. Okay, so it's the heaven and the earth, right? So it's talking about apparently non-conscious matter, but it's ascribing a conscious intent to them and a capacity to respond to God's call. At some level, it indicates that there is some consciousness. And the Quran talks about this in other places as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So in chapter 17, Surah Bani Israel of the Quran, chapter 17, verse 45, the seven heavens and the earth and those that are therein extol his glory. And there is not a thing but glorifies him with his praise, but you understand not their glorification. Verily he is forbearing, most forgiving.
Okay, so not a thing. What's the Arabic there? Masha?
Awa'im min shay'in.
Shay'in,
a thing.
Everything.
Anything, yeah.
So it has its own form of praise. Now, what is that form of I know it says you don't understand it, but
yeah, I mean, I can't answer that question.
But it must be. I guess we can speculate that the meaning there is that it's form of prayer we don't understand, but it's obeying God's will.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And that itself is exalting God because it's showing that He is the master.
Yeah.
Right. So it has a capacity of obedience, which indicates a capacity of
disobedience.
Theoretically, but of consciousness.
Yeah,
of some degree of
choice and agency and consciousness.
Some degree of agency.
Yeah, and maybe choice and agency is the root of consciousness. Maybe that is actually where it's all at. Because we talk about AI. Does AI and will it ever have the AI have the ability to make a choice beyond its programming? That's a very difficult question to answer.
So here's how they would. This is how they would program it. They would create some kind of ability to have a series of random outcomes, which it then choose. So it's like a random number generator, or it has some kind of randomity, which it will break down and choose a particular seed out of a bunch of them. Yeah. Right, and they'll say this is like choice. Actually, it's not choice. That's just chance. That's how Midjourney works. So their image generators, they have seeds. They create a sort of random cloud based on the prompt. And from that cloud, it will produce a certain type of image, right? Randomly.
But humans don't act by randomly.
Yeah, there's a difference between chance and choice. Those are two different things.
Yeah.
I didn't come up with that. I think Jan Levin, who's a philosopher of science or a scientist, said that in a book. So there's a difference between chance and choice. She was talking about how quantum can't explain humans' consciousness because
it's chance.
Yeah, it's chance. It's not choice. Choice indicates actual knowing of the outcome. It indicates a fundamental subjective experience. Okay, I'm choosing this. There's a subject and there's an object. Okay, I'm choosing this. Whereas chance is simply it's not that.
So, what's your take on the consciousness problem of AI and whether you think it will? How you've done a master's of philosophy of psychiatry, so you should be well equipped to talk.